Hello, everyone. I am here to give you guys uh, what I read review for the month of January of 2024. 2024 has started. I did not do a book wrap up, monthly wrap up in a few months. And I thought about doing one for the end of the year of 2023, but though I read a lot, I figured I just didn't feel like going back. So I'm just doing the month of January. Sorry if you were interested in what I read the last bit of 2023, but maybe one day I will come back to those books and refer to them. But I'm just going to stick with this month. Now, it's not officially February yet, but I don't think I'm going to finish any more books before the next month. So I figured I should just go ahead and do this video now as I have the time. So I am going to get out my trusty Goodreads app because that's where I put all of my ratings for each of these books. If you're not on Goodreads, I definitely recommend it. Ever since I've been on Goodreads, it has helped hold myself accountable to reading. I go in there every single day and I just put an update of what page I am in my book. If I'm doing an audiobook, I put the percentage of, how far I gotten in my book. And, it's really motivating. Go ahead and look for me if you want to, be friends with me or follow me on Goodreads. I'm Stacy Ellis, spelled with an I-E. My name is spelled with I-E. There's no Y's in my name. And for those of you who do not know, that's the feminine way to spell Stacy. Whenever you put a Y at the end, it is now a masculine version. And that's the case for all those names that are similar to Stacy. So Tracy, Lacey, Stacy, Macy, any name that has a Y at the end, or it could be an IE. The IE is the feminine version. So I know not everybody knows that because, people be naming their kids names and not think about the history of grammar and all that. But my mom is actually very good with grammar and she spelled my name correctly for me being a female. So, all right. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a few books that I want to get through. So the first book that I read in 2024, or I finished reading in 2024, I actually started it in 2023, is Desperate Marriages by Gary Chapman. So a lot of people are familiar with the 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So this, obviously, it does refer to that book in here, but this kind of goes in deep. Desperate Marriages, a lot of people who are married go through hard times. And for some people, those hard times might be more extreme than others. And Gary here goes through several different topics that are very, very tough topics. And he provides you with some guidance on how you can handle those situations. So let me just go through some of the topics that he has here. He talks about the irresponsible spouse, the workaholic, the controlling spouse, the uncommunicative spouse, the verbally abusive spouse, the physically abusive spouse, the sexually abusive spouse, the unfaithful spouse, the alcoholic or drug abusing spouse, the depressed spouse. But there's also additional chapters there's like 3 additional chapters. But those are the different topics. So he goes in deep. Like he talks about, what if your spouse is looking at porn, or they've sexually assaulted your child, or if you were sexually assaulted as a child and now that you're married, did that cause problems in your relationship? Let's see. the uncommunicative spouse. I find that actually is a very common one. Not communicating effectively with your spouse. Now, not that automatically if you don't communicate that you're in a desperate marriage or anything like that, but I have friends, I have family members, I've come across different situations where I can tell that communication skills can be improved in the relationship. Um, Without good communication in your relationship, you are going to cause some problems. And so he talks a little bit about that. You have to be willing and able to speak to your spouse about anything, literally. And when you don't, or you just assume that your spouse knows what you're thinking, that's when problems start to happen. I don't know why women in particular have this idea that men know exactly what you're thinking and that they should know, like, well, you should know you should be doing this. You should know this. You should know that. Women, just so you know, they don't know. Okay? If you want your husband to take out the garbage, you need to tell him to take out the garbage. Some men will do it automatically, but some you have to tell. And you might think to yourself, he knows that the garbage needs to go out every single day. I shouldn't have to tell him that. I shouldn't have to tell him to take out the garbage every single day. And that's where communication comes. Having a conversation with him saying, "Hey, these are some expectations that we should set for each other. There's an expectation for me to cook dinner. There's an expectation for you to take the garbage out every day," or whatever the case may be. But just assuming that people are going to do something and you don't say anything and then you get mad, that's not going to work, right? So this book, Desperate Marriages, I gave 4 stars. The reason why I gave it 4 stars is because with some of the different topics he has in here, he shares examples from his own practice. So he is I believe a counselor or a therapist. And he has clients, and he changed the names for this book. But he'll give like some examples of things that they have gone through, and you may relate to some of those examples that are in this book, but you may not. The thing that I didn't like is that sometimes he would provide an example, but he does not always provide you with a solution. He might point out, like, yes, this is a problem. You need to be aware that this is a problem. You need to seek help for such and such problem, which I guess that is a solution, seeking help. But in some instances, I would have liked to see a little bit more practical examples of what you can do in these situations. Now, I need to say this now because I already know some of you guys might be thinking, Stacy, are you in a desperate marriage? Are you and your husband going through a hard time right now? I will tell you, no, we are not going through a hard time. However, I still wanted to read this because, for one thing, I end up talking to a lot of women that I may mentor or disciple up, and they go through things like this. And, being that I haven't gone through, my spouse cheating on me or being physically abusive towards me or, things like that, I don't have, because I haven't experienced that, I don't have, if somebody comes to me with that, what am I going to say, right? And so I wanted to read this in part for that. But also, even with those extreme situations, there are practical things that you can learn. There were definitely things in this book that I learned about myself and about my husband that's like, oh, we may need to work on this. Like, we're not at the point where it's like super bad. We're not in a desperate marriage by any means. But we definitely need to work on this, or it can escalate to a point where it can become that, right? And so I do firmly believe that prevention is key. Like, if you educate yourself on different things, you can help prevent yourself from experiencing certain mishaps that some people have in their marriages. And so that's in part why I read this. The main reason, though, was the first one that I said. I sometimes mentor different women, and I come across individuals that are experiencing these hard things, and I want to be able to provide good advice to them. Obviously, I am not a counselor. I'm not a trained licensed counselor or anything like that. But, spiritual things that I can say that could be an encouragement, or, in certain situations, maybe, it's appropriate for me to tell them, hey, you need to go actually see professional help regarding this situation. Um, you know, so it was a really good book overall. I do recommend this for anyone who is married, literally, if you're married, or if you are a woman that is in leadership, or man that's in leadership in the church, and you mentor um, younger couples, or, for me, younger women that obviously are married or will get married. This is a great resource for you, so that way you can be prepared before you face those types of different situations. So, 4 stars, Desperate Marriages. The next book that I finished is actually it's, you might have seen this in the bookstore. I feel like it's a fairly new published. Let me see the copyright date. Of course, 2019, maybe? I don't know. I don't see a copyright date. Yeah, I don't see a copyright date. This is a very strange book. Um, it definitely does not have a copyright date. That is strange. Anyways, it's a fairly new book. 2019, I want to say, or maybe 2018 even. I don't know. But it's a fairly new book. I've seen it in Barnes and Nobles, and I've seen it, it's recently been put. Now, maybe it's an older book. I don't know. And maybe they just republished it. I don't know. But if you can't read it, it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackey. I don't know. Macksey? I don't know. So I read this in one evening. So it looks like it's a thick book, right? And when you look at the cover, it's like, oh, this is like going to be a novel. But it's actually, the whole entire book is written in this. So I feel like the person who had this book had like a sketchbook, and they literally just wrote it out by hand, and they drew all these pictures. So like when you look through here, it's literally everything is written, like it's a sketchbook, right? They drew pictures and they had written by hand. I will say, for me, this handwriting was hard to read. But like I said, I got done with this book in one evening. It didn't take me long to get through it. But I couldn't read as fast as I normally could because of the handwriting. It's definitely you have to concentrate a little bit. It's not like one of those that you can just skim through. Some people, I guess, they could do it, but for me, I had to actually like read it because it's cursive. Okay. So this book, let's see. I feel like, yeah, I gave this book 3 stars. The reason why, in part, is because it was really, for my eyes, it wasn't pleasant reading. The fact that it was cursive. I also wasn't really a fan of the illustrations in here. I feel like, they were lacking in terms of actually trying to make, like, there was great potential with all of, like, this could have been so beautiful if they just tried a little bit harder with the drawings. I felt like it was like somebody was trying to cut corners with their drawing. They thought, oh, let's be kind of cool and let's kind of draw the pictures, but not actually finish it all the way. And I didn't like that. I am an artsy person, and I find that a lot of times, lately in particular, a lot of artists are being lazy with their work and they're calling it art. I feel like you can actually try and put in a little bit more effort. Like all this stuff, it just looks like why are you not trying? I just don't understand. So I didn't like that. For this type of book, it seems like it's supposed to be a picture book, and the pictures, they were not pleasant to look at. Like, I want to enjoy the pictures when I'm looking at them. I don't want to feel like the whole experience of just looking at this book was very frustrating. And I think, that was part of the reason why the star numbers went down. Part of the reason why it's at a 3 and not lower than a 3, though, is because it did have some good bits of wisdom in here. Um, if I'm honest, there's nothing in here that I didn't already know. So it's not like they said some wise words that's like, oh, wow, that really spoke to me. That was something new. I'm going to take that and run with it. Like, it all was stuff that I've either heard it before or I heard something similar before. And I'm like, okay, yes, I know that. So for me, I didn't necessarily learn anything new from this book. However, I think for some people who don't really know a lot of wise sayings, they might find benefit um, of reading this book. Now, the other thing that I don't like about this book is that it wasn't. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it makes it seem like they are together or they end up meeting and then they stay together the whole time. It's not necessarily, uh, it is for some of the characters, but not all of them. And so I think the title is misleading. It's literally not like, there's not like a real story, I feel like it's not a real story here. It's just a lot of like trying to get you to think. So this book is appropriate for all ages, as long as the child can read cursive, and so they might enjoy it. I'll be honest, I think most children won't enjoy this. Teenagers might be okay with it. Preteens probably be okay with it, and some adults will be okay with it. I really I think that, like I said, the thing that got me is I feel like this. I feel like the lack of care putting into this work is what frustrated me. As an artist, as someone that spent years writing, like I just felt like, and this, you know, some people might enjoy this and they might find this very artsy and very like it probably speaks to them and it might be very meaningful. But for me, unfortunately, it didn't hit the mark. But I still gave it 3 stars because I appreciated what they were trying to do, and it wasn't like super bad. Like it's not like it said some horrible things that I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that. So I gave it 3 stars. Okay. The next book that I finished was a um, illustrated version of The Secret Garden. So I read The Secret, or my class was supposed to read The Secret Garden when I was in, I don't know, middle school. I don't know what grade you're supposed to read The Secret Garden. I didn't actually read it then, but we watched the movie. I remember watching the movie, and this is the picture version. So there's pictures, and it's a children's version. I always like having children's books because, especially at the end of the day, I don't want to feel like it's a task for me to read. Like, oh, get through this book. So whatever I read at nighttime, I want it to be something that's easy to read, something that won't strain my eyes. So children's books typically have bigger letters, which is why I like reading children's books. Now you might say, Stacy, you're a grown woman. Why are you reading children's books? There's nothing wrong with reading children's books. A lot of these still pertain to adults. So this book in particular is a smaller version of the original Secret Garden. So they took parts out, and obviously they made it so that way children can read it, and they added pictures. So for me, I enjoyed it. And now I want to read the actual Secret Garden after reading this. So I gave this one 4 stars. Um, so if you're not familiar with the Secret Garden, there is a garden that's a secret. It's a secret garden. That there's children that's involved. They go to the garden and all that. I'm not going to go into detail about it because then I'll tell too much about the story. But I figured, the title itself gives that part away that there's a secret garden out there that they would go to. But I think there's a lot of great things. I did towards the end, I had a underline that I liked. So it says, to let a sad thought or a bad one get into your mind is as dangerous as letting a scarlet fever germ get into your body. If you let it stay there after it has got in you, it may never get out as long as you live. I really enjoyed that phrase because it's true. Like, you really need to watch what you think. You need to watch what you listen to, what you watch, what you look at. I think about our society today. Everyone's so divisive. And I think that's because we have been letting all this negative things into our minds, which is causing everyone to act the way they are. So, yeah. So you can take that with you, that little snippet. Okay, the next book that I finished is Capital Gains by Chip Gaines, Smart Things I Learned Doing Stupid Stuff. So I actually really enjoyed this. I had listened to the audiobook while I was reading this. I gave it 5 stars. It was a pretty fast read. He goes through different parts of his life, different things that he's experienced in his life, and the lessons he's learned from those things. And I will say, for me, I feel like God was telling me to read this book for a while. Like, sometimes you have a book on your shelf and it seems like it's like, read this. Like, really, this book, like, I just got it because it was really cheap. When I originally got it, it was very, very cheap. And I like Chip and Joanne Gaines, and so I just got it because it was cheap. But it wasn't like I was super excited to read it. But I did feel like God was telling me to read this recently. And so I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and read it. And the funny thing is, too, so whenever I go through deciding what books, sometimes I feel like, yes, I need to read this book. Like, I might have a urge to read a book and I'll just grab it. But then there's sometimes I'm like, I don't know. And so I actually do an any, meeny, miny, mo type thing where I go through my bookshelves to figure out what bookshelf am I going to pull from. And then I might even do any, meeny, miny, mo even more on the bookshelf if I still don't know what. And so that's what I did. I went all the way to the point. I went through each bookshelf, and then I went through every single shelf. And then I eventually went through each book that I did not read yet. And this is the one that came up. And I was like, you know what? I know God was telling me to read this. And I just was putting it off. And I'm very glad I did. That I finally did read it. Because it opened my eyes. So I am currently in a phase now where I am entering into my career. I graduated and I am starting my business. And I had, whenever you start something new in life, there's like some hesitations and fears. But reading this book, like going through his life and how he has gone through and started different businesses and how him and his wife were using not only their business to make money, but to make a difference in the world. Like, literally, like, Waco, Texas is now on the map. Like, people know about Waco, Texas. People will come to Waco, Texas to go to the Magnolia Market. Like, they have made a huge impact on the world just by making those decisions that they knew that they were supposed to do. And so, it's not going to always be easy, but if you follow your gut feelings and you follow the voice of God, God will, they weren't looking to become famous. They weren't in it originally to become millionaires or anything like that. They just knew that God was using them, and they stepped into those roles and did those things. And I thought it was interesting too. There was actually a few times where they stepped back from things because they knew that God was telling them to step back. And being aware of that, like not just doing things just because, oh, there's a lot of money involved here, so I should do it because I'm going to get millions of dollars, but being aware that God might say, no, this season is now closed. You need to work on this now and all that. So I really, for me, this was a motivation for me as I am, going into the next season in my life. And I very, very appreciated it. So I gave it 5 stars. So definitely recommend it, especially if you're like me going through certain seasons. And then the last book that I read for the month of January is In Search of a Prince from Toni Shiloh. So I wasn't going to read this book. I had found it at Mardell. We have a Mardell, which if you don't know what a Mardell is, it's a Christian bookstore / a teacher supply store. Literally, it's 2 stores in one. Like, it doesn't really make sense, but it works. So, and this one was on sale. See, it has a bargain sticker here. I want to say it was $5, maybe. And it was on sale. I saw it and it was on sale. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna read that because, it sounds like it's gonna be like a romance. I'm not into romance. And, I just, And so I didn't buy it originally. But then I started thinking about it more and more, and so I ended up going back and purchasing it, and I actually truly enjoyed it. So it is still a romance, and I will be honest, I don't like romance. I don't. Um, but there was enough in this book that wasn't a romance that made me tolerate it well, I guess, so to speak. So it's about this girl who finds out that she is a princess, pretty much, and she's going to take over the kingdom, right? And so she's in search of a prince, right? Um, and I think part of the reason why I kept going back to like maybe I should get this book is because she's a black princess. And how many black princesses do you know? Not that many. And so I kind of felt like, I don't know, like I probably should read this, and there's Christian, a lot of different Christian things in here. And so yeah, so that's part of the reason why I decided to read it. I will be honest, again, because I'm not into romance, when it got to the points where it got to the romance stuff, I kind of was getting a little frustrated, a little. Like, I don't know why I just cringe at a lot of romances. I mean, I do know why. I'll tell you exactly why. I cringe at it because I feel that sometimes when women in particular, not necessarily men, I think men are a little bit more realistic in this avenue. I feel that sometimes women have this idea of what relationships should be like, what love should be like, how a man should act towards you, the romance aspect that should happen. Like there's this anticipation and expectation that, oh, if I find Mr. Right, he's going to act this way, that I will have these feelings, that, he's going to act this way towards me and all that. And to me, it's kind of selfish, like that feeling. And so whenever I read romance stuff and that stuff goes on, I'm just like, is this really real life? Like, I mean, I love my husband to death, and there's moments where I would say, yeah, it was romantic, but it's not like most romance novels. Like, in my book, I don't think it is. And so it's kind of frustrating. And then, like, the idea that it's so easy to just fall in love. Sorry, for me and my husband, I mean, he knew before me that he loved me, but for me, it took me a good year for me to know if I actually loved him or not. So, whenever I read stories of people who are like, oh, I just knew when I first looked at you. Well, I guess, again, my husband knew very soon after we were together, like even before we were together, that he wanted to be with me. So I guess there is that, but I still just I don't know. I'm just not into all the romance. And I get tired of hearing all the drama involved in romance and all that. So, yeah. There's a lot of talk about romance. This book itself though, I thought was really good. There's a lot of other drama that goes on in here that the romance part I feel like maybe was maybe a good little section. Like I don't think it was the bulk of the book, like if I'm honest. So that's why I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I did there was a little bits of wisdom in here. Um yeah, I don't want to read that one. I like okay, his her grandfather did give this little bit of wisdom. Do not let the clock push you into a decision you are uncomfortable with. So I think that's very important because sometimes we feel like we have to give an answer right then and there to somebody. At least I used to feel that way, but it's okay. You can say no, let me think about it and come back with you about an answer. And so yeah, I thought that was a nice little piece of wisdom in this book. I know that this is I think the first of a series maybe, so I may read the next one if I find one on sale. I don't think I'll buy like pay the full price for it, just because I don't know. Like it was good. I gave it 4 stars, but it's not like one of those books that I'm like, ooh, like let me really go and buy it. I don't. I just. I don't. I don't know. I don't know. So those are the books I read in the month of January. I am currently in 2 books right now. No, 3 books. Three? I think 3 books right now I'm reading that I know I'm not going to finish. So that will be next month that I will. Well, actually, one of those books I know for a fact I won't even finish next month. I'm reading a book about the early church fathers. There's different sayings that or not sayings, it's excerpts from their writings. It's not the whole writing, it's just like bits and pieces. I would like to eventually read all of the writings, but it's a lot. At least the writings of the early church fathers, so those before the time of the Nicene, so the Ante-Nicene, I believe is what it's called, Ante-Nicene. I would like to read those because that's like the early church, and that tells us a lot about like what the early church believed and the doctrine. And some of those early church fathers were disciples of the actual apostles and all of that. So I figured that would be kind of fun to read those books. Understanding that it's not the Bible, but I think that there'll be value reading those books. And so, yeah. But I don't have those books. I just have this book that I found from my half price bookstore. So I purchased it and I'm reading it now and I am enjoying it. And yeah, I'm also reading, I guess it's not devotional. It's like publications from a pastor, so to speak, I guess is what I would call it. So I'm going through that, and then I'm reading another child's book. Of course, I always like my little children's books for the end of the day. So I'm going through that right now. So, all right. Well, I am done talking. I hope everyone's having a good start of the new year, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.